We have been seeing the past week of chaos in the Middle East, which kept the whole world busy. What is the latest in the news as of today?
Now, the latest on the table as of now is
sir.
that there are only 6 countries in the world right now which are making the news all over.
Okay.
And that is Israel, Iran, USA, Kenya, Russia, and Ukraine. And those are the only countries which have joined early enough in the undertakings of shaping the world order. Now, as Israel and Iran were busy trading missiles and bombardments against each other, Russia and Ukraine are still battering the worst against each other. As Kenyan citizens are exchanging stones, tear gas, and bullets against the police, USA is ordering, warning, commanding, and directing around on how the world should be run. As people from Gaza are isolated and also dying in big numbers while the world is watching.
You talked of Kenya being the only African country joining Israel, Iran, Russia, Ukraine, and the United States in having news that has shaped the world. Are you saying this because you are Kenyan?
I'm not necessarily saying this because of that. I am saying this from a perspective of an independent analyst. What I can still insist is that Kenya is the most unique country in Africa right now, especially when it comes to knowing, demanding, and fighting for their rights with blood and soul. The only African country which comes close to Kenya when it comes to that is South Africa. So our forefathers and great-grandfathers fought for Kenya's independence from the British colonial rule, where they used the various forms of resistance, guerrilla war, intense violence, political movements, and armed conflict. And most notably, it was the Mau Mau uprising. So this involved grave bloodshed, which traumatized the British into declaring Kenya's independence in 1963. So this blood of resistance and political movements and uprisings were later passed to the generations till now that you can now see the Kenyan Gen Zs behaving in the same way as they are now demanding for freedom against what they call bad governance.
Do you want to say that apart from South Africa and Kenya, other countries in Africa were just given independence instead of fighting for it, especially East Africa?
Not really. What you should also know is that other African countries which clearly fought for independence, apart from Kenya and also South Africa, which employed both non-violence and violent tactics, like the ANC and later violent militant groups like Umkhonto we Sizwe. We also have Angola, who had a bloody fight against the Portuguese. We also had Guinea-Bissau, which used something called PAIGC, the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, I think I'm right, where they launched a decade-long of guerrilla war against the Portuguese from 1963 to 1974. We also have Frelimo in Mozambique. They were called Frente de Libertação de Mozambique, something like that, Mozambique Liberation Front. They had a bloody war against the Portuguese. We also had Namibia. They had something called SWAPO, known as the Liberation Army for Namibia. They had a bloody fight for Namibian liberation and South African occupation. And then we have Zimbabwe, who also had something called the Rhodesian War between 1964 and 1979, where the Black Liberation Army were fighting against the white minority government. So those are the only notable African countries that had the past of violent and organized struggle, though that kind of struggle later died from somewhere, and it was not passed to the current generation like the way it is in South Africa and Kenya.
Do you want to say that other East African countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Southern Sudan, DRC, and Rwanda were just given independence?
What you should know is that no African country was just given independence. The struggles were both violent and non-violent, and it involved some kind of pull and push. Like the DRC was against the colonial rule. They were also violent, but not organized. That's why you can see they're disorganized. They seem to be disorganized up to date. Rwanda also fought for its independence, but it was not a prolonged struggle like other countries. Though the Belgian rule in Rwanda caused the Hutu and Tutsi to divide, and it almost burnt the country until the current leadership came to settle the country. You can see now. Uganda's independence was also achieved through a relatively peaceful transition, no struggles, rather than armed conflict or what. They were not after that. Though Tanzania partly also fought for their independence, they also instead engaged in negotiations and political action to convince the colonialists to grant them independence. South Sudan also just got their independence from North Sudan, but that is a story for another time. So Kenya is the only notable country with that blood of struggles and fight for what they understand as their rights to date.
You said that Kenya is a country which is a key player in shaping the New World Order. How is that so?
No, Kenya is not the only African country involved in shaping the New World Order.
Okay.
No, I didn't really say exactly that. Though Kenya has been actively pursuing a more prominent role in the global stage, particularly in advocating for something like a more inclusive and fair world order. You get it? So many other African nations are also engaged in shaping global affairs through various means. Now, Kenya is a regional economic and transportation hub, and its stability and influence in East Africa has made it a key partner for various international actors. Now, remember, we also have Nigeria. It is a major economic powerhouse and the key player in regional continental affairs. Now here Kenya is seen as a major player from Africa in shaping the New World Order. And it is because of that that the West believe that Kenya has a similar mindset like them, like believing in multilateralism, cooperation, peaceful coexistence under the UN Charter, and they see Kenya as an African game changer in New World Order. And according to them, it will take Kenya like 5 to 10 years to change into a great nation under the New World Order. However, that is their views, not my views.
Why is it that Israel looks to be dragging around the United States into its conflicts around the region?
Now, let me use the layman's language and layman's description so that everyone can understand. Now, Israelis happen to be multi-billionaires across the United States and some parts of Western Europe. So because of this, you find that they can easily influence economic, political, and social life across the United States especially. So you find that these are the very people who happen to influence decision making, even funding the US campaigns to influence the kind of a leader that they want in the US, whom they can easily manipulate. So it is said that these people influence America's economy by a wide margin, to the extent that if they pull off, the US can feel the pinch. So these Israelis have something called the AIPAC, American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. It is a pro-Israel political action committee in the United States that advocates for the policies that can strengthen the relationship between the US and Israel. Now, this is the largest pro-Israel PAC in the United States of America that contributes 98% resources directly to candidates that they themselves want to lead America. That is why Israel looks like the boss around, ordering around, like when a war comes up, the US has to obey.
With an ordinary layman's thinking off the box, kindly share with me, what would you think would be a solution to end the Israel-Palestinian war? And please, feel free to think crazily off the box.
Now, I think the world should come together, set up a fund, buy up a densely populated Greenland, which has only 56,000 people, then relocate the Palestinians from Gaza, then settle them in Greenland. Then leave the Israelis with their land in the West Bank and see what they will do next, whether they will go and attack Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, or Egypt. If they do anything like that, then Israel has the problem. That's my take.
Wow, what a hot podcast that has been.
Yeah, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel for more exclusive information beyond this. Till next time, bye-bye.